Welcome to the Football Historian Podcast.
By all means, enjoy it.
He will go right to the very top.
Dos, tres, cuatro times.
Here we go, Germans.
I will turn these results round.
All right, that's good manners.
There's animosity, but there's no fight.
You can't beat them, join them.
You make me feel sick if I look at you.
No, I want to fight here.
Don't drink, don't sleep with women, don't drive fast cars.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit too!
Hello, welcome to the Football Historian Podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Doan. First question I always ask, and I apologise if it comes across rude, is who are you and why are you here?
Who am I? A lot of people may ask the same thing. Basically, for 27 years, I was the curator of Liverpool Football Club Museum, the club historian, or should we say, the official one for Liverpool Football Club. But I work with hundreds of other people who know far more than I do. But basically, I was brought in by the club in 1997 to create the museum from scratch, and I've just stepped down and handed it over to Mark Platt to take it forward. So that's who I am.
So as you said, you're best known for being the Liverpool Museum curator. I want to talk about your writing later on, but first of all, you got the job in 1997, is that correct?
That's right, September 97. Yeah.
How did that happen? How did you apply?
Basically, I have the most peculiar route to be the curator of a museum in Liverpool Football Club. I'm actually trained as a fine artist. I've got a degree in fine art. So, I mean, obviously, that means it makes you perfect work in a Premier League football club, doesn't it? But finding that wasn't really working, I got into being a historian and working in museums. So I was working in Bristol. And then from Bristol, I went to South Wales, to Merthyr Tydfil, of all places. I was working there for 10 years, having a good time, thoroughly enjoying it. But I thought it was time for a move. And I was sort of kept looking around for jobs, see what else was going around. And in those very retro, old-fashioned days where you bought the Guardian on a Monday, and that's where you had a look for adverts in that section. And there was this tiny advert, because let's face it, Liverpool Football Club don't like to spend too much money on adverts, do they? And the advert was literally minute. But Liverpool Football Club, just what's that? And because the writing was so small, all I read was something on the lines of brand new museum curator, please write. And I thought they meant please write to apply. Actually, they'd said please write for more information. Now, if I'd written for more information, they'd have sent me back some information just basically saying, we need a student, somebody young who's just fresh out of college. In other words, they didn't want to pay too much.
Yeah.
But I was now a skilled curator. But I just wrote a letter of application. And of course, it was blindingly obvious that I knew considerably more than the other people who'd applied. So I was interviewed by the most unbelievable panel of people. We had David Moores, the owner of the club then at the time, Roy Evans, the then manager of Liverpool Football Club, and Brian Hall, sadly no longer with us, but a wonderful former player, of course. Bryce Morrison, club secretary, also no longer with us. Peter Robinson, then sort of CEO of the club. Unfortunately, so many of these people aren't with us, but what a lineup!
Yeah,
and it's like, blimey. No pressure, and the personnel manager of the time as well. But anyway, I got the job, and so here I am, 27 years later.
Well, yeah, that sounds quite daunting, to be fair. I think good job you weren't a 19-year-old student or who they were probably looking for at the time.
I think probably so, and particularly for a 19-year-old student who loves Liverpool Football Club. I think it would have just been a case of just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But I mean, I have to say, and it's one of those lovely stories which I've spent 27 years telling people and also questioning others about. Surely I am the only person who has ever actually interviewed for their job by an acting Premier League manager. I mean, players aren't interviewed for their jobs,
Yeah.
And I don't suppose managers interview, medical staff at the training camp, etc. So I actually, Roy Evans interviewed me for my job.
That's mad, yes. I turn up to
Great,
John Emery now, yeah.
Yeah.
So you probably won't remember, but you helped me with my dissertation in uni. When I was writing about the football history. Well, thank you very much for that again. Okay, great. Well, thanks, Paul. I was talking to you at that time, saying like you got the dream job. Is that very much how it felt while you were in it? Was that the perfect job for you?
Yes. all jobs have their downsides. There are some days when you're sitting in an open plan office and it's noisy and the air conditioning is on ice cold or boiling hot and blah, 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 and there are no windows and you think, oh, I want to go home. You know, like every job in the world. But let's be honest, it has been the most incredible, life-changing experience. Yes, at the end of July, I retired after 27 years, but you don't really leave, do you? I mean, I've been going back now once a month, if not twice a month, doing some work with the foundation in the club. I'm in regular contact with Mark Platt, who's taken over in my role. I'm sitting here now talking about it. You know, it's the old thing. You can't really leave Liverpool, can you? You know, so, but no, it has been fantastic, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything in the world.
That's great. And then obviously you arrive in 97. As you say, you've just handed over the reins to Mark Platt. It was the relaunch of the museum was like your last official act.
Yes.
So how much has the club changed in terms of history and just the club in general, so from when you first walked in to when you walked out?
It's changed so much. It's unbelievable. I mean, I you know, I don't want to be negative in it at all, but to be honest with you, I don't feel personally that the club where it is now is the club that I love as much as I loved in 97, let's say. It was very much a family. You were a small group of people. Now, the club obviously has got considerably bigger. Considerably bigger means it has to run on a different way. That's correct. There's nothing wrong with any of that. There are still some wonderful people there in the club now. So I'm not knocking it. It's just that when I was there, we were literally a small group of people. And I'm talking, you know, the chief executive. You had, you know, the club's secretary and a few other people, you know, Jed Poynton, who still works, you know, even now as with the club, who was the stadium manager. I mean, there was literally about 7 of us who got together every Monday, me included. Don't ask me why the museum curator was included, but we had board meetings, so management meetings every Monday where we basically talked about the whole running of the club. And you saw that whichever manager are at least 2-3 times a week. You saw the players all the time. It was like a band of brothers and sisters, if you like. Now it's a very big organisation, so the club has changed profoundly, but it's still a wonderful place. So it's just that you can't help but hankering for the good old days in some ways.
So you must have heard some secrets and been involved in some arguments in those board meetings. I'm not asking you to share them, but that's just as a fan, that must have been quite maybe eye-opening to be part of them.
It was eye-opening and also very humbling in some way, because you come in, you know, you're setting up a museum, you're the club historian, yet you're sitting in meetings talking about, you know, ticketing issues for the next big, you know, European game, or we're talking about I don't know. Also, well, for instance, a classic one. We're sitting on a Monday morning, and the then finance director, Les Wheatley, who again, who's sadly no longer with us, he just said, it actually really does look like we're going to sell Fernando Torres. And I was going, you know, joking, are you? There's no way we're selling Fernando Torres. I mean, you know, he says, honestly, and he was sitting there and he said, sorry, I've just go, you know, they've done the deal. We're all, this is crazy, you know. You know, it's like sort of little things like that.
Yeah.
But also like, one of the most unbelievable things for me was, for many years, in the days when we used to have shareholders, you had the annual general meeting, which many people will probably remember, and that was the most extraordinary day for me, because it looks like I don't know, seemed to be a bit of a favourite with David Moores, because the idea was, you know, the top people of the club, we all went for a rather wonderful lunch in box 1A of you know, in what is now the Kenny Dalglish, was then the centenary stand. So we had this pre-AGM lunch, and it was seriously good, with some exceptional wine that Bryce Morrison had chosen. But David always asked me to sit next to him, and I'm sitting there thinking, you know, why am I here? But you know, you're being wined and dined. But this is the crazy thing: the then manager, whichever manager, they sat in the box next door. They weren't allowed to sit, and you suddenly think, why? And the manager was not allowed to join in. Now, isn't that interesting? There was this kind of real hierarchy, and I'm thinking, does that mean I'm kind of more important than the manager? Serious. But you know, it was wonderful, flattering. And then of course there were the the parties that the own, that David threw, and these were players, wives, girlfriends, the manager and wife, and the top people only. This was a small group of people. They were something else. But I'm not going to tell you anything more than that.
Yeah, I can expect that. There's a million questions I want to ask. Who's the surprise party animal? You give me a name.
Surprise party animal. Actually, well, okay, I'm going to tell you a few things which are kind of fun. There was one time I was there. I was on my own because my partner lives abroad, so it often worked out that it landed just at the time when she wasn't able to join me. So I'd basically go as Billy No Mates on my own. And one time we were there, Michael Owen was there, and his wife was very, very heavily pregnant. In fact, so much so that she was really sort of like sitting there almost ready to get rushed off to the hospital sort of thing. So she obviously couldn't really partake. And, in really partying, let's say. And so he just basically came over to me and said, Steve, he said, do you fancy a dance? So me, Michael Owen, basically we were on the dance floor for hours, just arsing around, and then we were joined by Didi Hamann, Jamie Carragher, Stevie G, and a few others. Most people were actually sort of. It was quite interesting, really, because most people didn't want to sort of kind of almost intrude, should we say, on the players, though it was private, no cameras, no nothing. This is just people having fun, and let's face it, drinking. So me and Michael were just messing around. It was just a laugh. But I mean, for a really quite a long time, and in fact, it was 2 days later, he pulled up in his car outside Anfield, and he came rushing up into my office, which was next to the museum at the time. He banged on the door and says, "Hey, dancing partner, how you doing?" So it's like, you had to just kind of, it was just fun, but those were the days really when you could have a kind of a relationship with the players, which I'm afraid you don't really get these days.
Yeah, when you just go home and pinch yourself or think, what was that? Have I just
he was a party animal, and I have to say, Didier Mann, I mean, with a cigar, sort of boogieing away, and Semi Hupia, he was pretty cool as well. But Sammy Lee liked a bit of a boogie.
That's great. Well, other than dancing and partying with Semi Hupia and Didier Mann, the day-to-day job of a club historian and museum curator, I'm sure most people think, surely you just put stuff in a glass box and you're done for 6 months. What do you do every day, and what did your job entail?
I mean, you did occasionally put things on display, and occasionally, take everything out and change everything around. But an awful lot of what I did was trying to collect stuff, because you've got to think in terms. I turned up in September '97. We had the room, which was basically empty. There were some plans which Brian Hall had helped work out with a museum design company for the walls and the cabinets, which were going to be installed. So, okay, I didn't have any say, but he was basically saying to me, well, what are we going to put in them, Steve? I said, well, I don't know, Brian, what have we got? He says, well, we've got about 30 things, literally, which the club had collected over the years. So it was a case of, well, better find something. So I just sort of went out there trying to collect stuff, meeting players, introducing myself to them. So you collect stuff, but then you end up collecting far too much. We've got a kind of massive, great storeroom full of stuff, thousands and thousands of things, which I've collected over the years. But then you've got to kind of research these things, archive them, photograph them, work out what the backstory of them is. And one of the things you learn about Liverpool Football Club is we may have more books about our history than any other football club in the world. And that's not really an exaggeration. I think it is technically correct. There are more historical books about our club than anything else. We're phenomenally well researched. There are some fantastic army of people who really know their stuff. And yet, for all of that, there are still peculiarities and unanswered questions, things which we still don't know. And you spend a lot of time trying to answer those things. But also, what became really obvious and has continued till the last day I was at work is that I was the go-to person for just about every department in the whole of the club, from chief executive down to, we've got something that needs fixing. Steve, you fix it. You're the one who will know. So a classic example is, we need a leaving present for Steven Gerrard. You've got 4 days. Come up with something amazing, because we come up with something a bit corporate and we decided he won't like it. So I think, right, okay. So I made Steven Gerrard's leaving present. In a similar way, sadly, this happened during COVID and lockdown and nobody around, but we had to do a fitting tribute to the wonderful Ray Clements, who was one of my great heroes. It's lockdown, everything's shut, you can't go anywhere. You've got to come up with something amazing, Steve. So so basically, Alison Becker wore my five-a-side football shirt, which is basically a replica of the 1981 Ray Clements. So he actually wore this at Anfield and then put it behind the goal with a wreath of flowers on it, which was the most astounding thing to do. But it's like, we've got to come up with something appropriate. Ask Steve, So you can get asked all sorts of weird and wonderful and odd things to do.
Yeah.
So it was an extremely varied job, to put it mildly. And yeah, there are times you sort of think, what do you do all day? But actually, there was an awful lot to do. And going through things like a huge photographic archive, of which we've got thousands upon thousands of photographs. Well, every one of those pictures got to be identified. It's got to have all the data attached to it. I spent years doing that kind of work, but it's important work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure, it was quite varied, and I was going to talk about the Clarence Allison thing later, because I remember seeing some of your highlights. But before we do that as well, I think it was Alan Shearer on the Rest is Football the other day. I think he was saying that some managers sometimes ask players to go through their club museum or new signings and go this is the history of the club, or they prepare a book or stuff like that. Is there any players that you met who were signing, you did that, and was there a particular manager who seemed to value the history above others?
Yes, it's actually been very interesting looking at how all the managers from Roy Evans to Arne Slot have had different approaches, really. Roy was very interested. Gerard Houllier was amazing. Gerard was fantastic. He really had a very close relationship with the museum. Well, we had a close relationship. I mean, I loved Gerard. It was wonderful. And he was very encouraging of the players to go around the museum. Rafa was pretty good, I'd have to say. Now, it isn't what people want to hear, and it may even, I don't know, annoy people, but it might surprise people when I would say one of the most supportive and one of the warmest and friendliest and most welcome managers we ever had, an appalling fit for the club. But as a man, Roy Hodgson was unbelievable. Now, he wasn't the right manager. I mean, we all knew that even before he got the job. It was like, really? But what a nice guy. And he couldn't do enough for everyone. I mean, he was amazing. It was a shame that he wasn't right. Because he wasn't right, Kenny has been phenomenal. I mean, Kenny Dalglish. I mean, come on, makes fun of you, which means you're probably getting on well with him. I tell you what, but one of the best actually. I don't know. Yeah, no, I think I'll probably leave it like that. Really, I mean, it's changed in recent years. So, and I don't really want that to sound sort of critical, because the system has changed, and sort of it's a much more. Probably a little bit more scary world for it if you're a manager these days, So the likes of Jurgen didn't come to the museum, and his players didn't. That sounds very negative, and it is somewhat disappointing. But on the other hand, they live in this very strange world now, where I can sort of see why they were less interested in stepping out into a kind of public zone. But in the earlier years, especially, though, the players were quite good at coming around. I mean, for instance, Steven Gerrard and Jamie Carragher, there's two fantastic high-level names. They've been in the museum many times. Jamie comes around, reasonably often. And don't come much better than that, does it really? And actually, in fairness, it was a bit of a breakthrough just recently, and I don't know, others will be able to judge this better than myself, but I sense our new manager is just slightly tweaking the culture. And we had Virgil come round with his daughter the other day, just on a private visit. Now that was like, wow. But the ultimate one, this is brilliant, this. He'd retired, and I think it's perhaps a slight indictment of modern day supporters that Sammy Hupia turned up one day. He turns up quite often, comes on the tour, just as a private, visitor. And he turns up quite often. and he loves it, and he's a massive fan of the museum and the tour. And he just turned up one day, and they were really, really, really busy. And he could see everyone was busy, and they have these kind of audio guides which they have to get ready and hand out to people to go around the tour, and they listen in. And he said, I'll give you a hand. And he goes around the desk, and he's standing behind the desk handing out audio guides. Nobody really noticed. But Sammy didn't mind. He wasn't doing it to be noticed. He was doing it to give a hand. You just think, what a top guy. I mean, come on, how cool is that? Yeah. Sammy Hoopier has handed out audio guides to people. But we've had a fair few of younger players coming around, even in recent years, quite a few. So perhaps I'd like to say more players should go round than do. But hey, let's see what happens.
They're all welcome, but maybe
they're always welcome.
Yeah. All right, well, just the last couple of things, just on your job, which obviously is quite an amazing and fascinating one. Saw your Facebook post where you announced that it was the last day and all that. You highlighted some of the highlights of your career, which firstly was quite easy for me to ask questions about. But obviously, there's some amazing things I just want to touch on. Firstly, Nessie Shankly and Jesse Paisley. But I'm sure you'll know the story from there. But just how important they are to the club and what you did with them.
Well, I mean, I've already mentioned how, in fact, I got the job and I was interviewed by the manager of Liverpool Football Club. So then, a few months later, we get to December 97 and we're opening the museum and unveiling the statue of Shankly on the same day. So they got together as many of the Shankly sort of footballers who were still around as they could. So it was an incredible lineup. So there was I thinking, I don't believe this. Look at all these people. Oh, gosh, But of course, there was Nessie and Jesse as well, and I was very aware of who they were, of course, and the importance of both Shankly and Paisley in the history of this club. So my job was literally just to show them around the museum as the top guests of honour, with all these other players following behind, and all the the senior members of Liverpool Football Club following behind. I thought, God, no pressure here. It's unbelievable, but they were lovely. They were just lovely, lovely people. Very kind, very warm. It all seemed to go down quite well, because it's hard to believe. Your head is just sort of going swimming, just thinking, oh, I hope I haven't made myself look a complete idiot here. Because you're effectively telling the story of all these people's lives, and you think, they might disagree. But the best of it, but obviously it worked. They loved it, and then there was this astounding moment at the end. Nessie had this handbag, a bit like the Queen. She had a handbag, and she opened it, and she said, "Bill always kept stuff given to him by the supporters, and he treasured it and took it very, very seriously." And he said, "You may or may not remember, but in 1973, when they were celebrating in front of the crowd at Anfield for winning." Effectively, what was the double, but really it was a league championship. There was a huge, they were all parading around. It was complete mayhem, wasn't it? You can see the film, and it was wonderful. And the cop was just wild, and people were throwing stuff, and scarves were being thrown down, raining down. And there's this famous moment where this policeman sort of flips a scarf away with his foot, and Shankly famously said, "Hey, don't do that. This is someone's dream, or his life, one of the two. Life, yeah. Anyway, he kept that scarf, and he took it home. She washed it, she rolled it up, and put it in a top drawer in their bedroom. And she said, "I want you to have that as a personal gift to you, not to the museum."
Wow!
And you just think, the scarf. She's like, "Oh wow." Gosh, so yeah, that was pretty cool.
So is that rolled up in your top drawer?
Actually, it's now in the museum because it is actually technically mine. Yeah, she gifted it to me, but it quite rightly should be seen. It has been seen over the years in the museum because it's just such an important object, isn't it? But yeah, how wonderful is that?
That's amazing, yeah. And then just one last quick thing. There's so many things I want to ask, but here, Istanbul trophy. Off you go.
Well, Istanbul, I mean, what can you say about Istanbul? What hasn't already been said before, other than that was the most incredible experience of my whole life. Trying to go to Istanbul for the day with the Liverpool Football Club. It's, by the way, don't try and go to Turkey for a day trip. It doesn't work. But somehow we managed to do this crazy, insane trip. As a result, I managed somehow to get back just in time to get to St George's Hall to see the bus come along. And then I think, enough, I've just got to go home. I've literally not slept for more hours than I care to remember. My head's spinning. So get back home, and the next day, come into work, and I'm thinking, and I'm sitting in my little office, which is what used to be next to the museum. And I'm just sitting there, and it's about sort of 9:30 in the morning, and I'm so tired, but also like buzzing, you know. And I'm thinking, I wonder where the trophy is, because I'm going to have to be putting this on display soon in the museum. And I just think, I wonder where it is. Oh well, see what happens, you know. And there's a little knock on my door. Hello, Steve. And this great big lump in a black bin liner gets plonked on my desk. There you go, mate. And I'm just sitting there, and it's one of those days before you had phones with cameras, so there's no photograph of it. But I just turned the lock on my door and sat there for a few minutes thinking, I've got the Champions League trophy. And literally the whole world is wanting to see this. And I'm not exaggerating. I said the media was outside was getting crazy. There were cameras everywhere, reporters, crowds of people. And it was the noise. And I was just sitting there thinking, I just need a couple of moments. Like, wow. Yeah. And then the phone goes, and I get the call from the finance director, Les Weekly, I already mentioned. He says, Steve, you've got the trophy now, haven't you? I said, I have. And he says, right, we're going to have a quick champagne reception for 20 minutes, and then you're going to get it into the museum. And he said, and all hell's going to let loose, I think. So he said, can you bring it through? And so I literally put the black bin liner on it again, nipped out of my door into the next one, into what was then the reception. Took the bin liner off and carried it through into the boardroom, and they all started singing, and my hands were shaking, and it was just the most. I mean, it was unbelievable. Yeah, wow. I mean, and then basically, I was, till just recently, I was the holder of the key to the cabinet of the Champions League trophy.
Wow, yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. Right, well, very final question on the job. Obviously, we're going to carry on talking, but you said you left after 27 years. It was your job so often to give the right departure, the right present. Were you happy with how the club said goodbye and thank you to you?
It was unbelievable. I mean, to be honest with you, it sounds like an exaggeration, but trust me, it's not. So Jurgen Klopp got a great send-off. Then I got one that was just slightly second to that. I mean, the send-off I got was just unbelievable. I mean, the club were phenomenal. Honestly, it was amazing. I'm not one for blow my own trumpet, really, honestly. And, you know, you hope you've done a decent job. But what became really obvious was the hundreds and hundreds of messages, but also the things that were said at the time made me think, I think I might have done all right. There were video messages from Tom Werner and Billy Hogan. Elvis Costello sent a video message through. Got one from Alan Kennedy. Got one from John Aldridge. Phil Thompson in Callaghan came along to the actual event, you know, to be there. I mean, it was astounding. And the main present I got is I literally just put it on the wall yesterday, actually, in my little home office, and it's just astounding. Some people may have seen that when Jurgen left, Jurgen got a set of little silver trophies, you know, fine, you know, wonderful. But then his backroom staff got, they got Peter and Pep. They both got a sort of, it's about this long, and it's a sort of condensed reproduction of the Wall of Champions for the training camp. It's like a wood veneer wall, and then it has little cutout letters and trophies. And they made another one. They made a third one for me, and it's astounding. And then you should read what was written, you know, by Billy Hogan. I mean, it was incredible. So I was kind of reading it, and it's many paragraphs long. And I started reading this, and Keith Watson, the chief designer of the club, said, by the way, just to let you know, this is about 2/3 longer than what he wrote for Jurgen. And Phil Thompson was leaning over and he said, well, quite rightly so, he was only there for 8 years. You were there for 27, mate. You know? But no, honestly, the send-off was astounding. And it will live with me forever, to be honest with you.
Well, that's great. Well, that's a perfect way to end the first section. That was quite a long one, but I think it was very interesting, so thank you very much.
I thought too much.
No, I enjoyed it, thank you. And we'll see you in a second for the next section. Welcome back to the next section of the Football Historian Podcast.
Sorry, Pete, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but where'd you get that shirt from?
Oh, this Lazio number's just from Classic Football Shirts. Where'd you get yours from?
Thank you. Mine's from Classic Football Shirts as well.
Wow. Well, when I bought my shirt, I used the code TFH10 to get 10% off all orders. Did you use the same?
I did. I used a discount code. I think it was the same as yours.
Oh, TFH10? Oh, that's great, because if you want to get 10% off all your orders, you can use TFH10 at classicfootballshirts.com.
Unbelievable deal.
Right, welcome back to the second section. Thank you for not running away in the break. I want to talk a bit more about Liverpool history in general, given your expertise in the area. There's a couple of items within the museum. There's a couple are amazing, a couple of them maybe smaller niche stories. Is that if you could pick 1, 2, 3, however many you want, that perhaps tell the story of the club best? I know it's quite a hard task, but what are like the most prized possessions you think in there?
Well, that is extremely difficult question to answer because we have so much wonderful stuff. Having said that, there are a number of things that I still think really, if you like, they really explain something about what makes Liverpool Football Club special. I mean, I know every supporter thinks their club is the special one. Of course they do. For me, one of the great moments was when one of the sort of the missing objects, which I dreamed still existed and we'd be able to put in the museum, did actually turn up. And it's what we like to call the Curlet Cup. The Curlet brothers were responsible for making it. And this is a truly remarkable object. I mean, let's be frank. In real terms, it's a piece of junk, in inverted commas, because it's a plastic vase, and not a very beautiful one at that. And it's got a bit of a wooden knob from the top of the newel post of her staircase on it, and it's been crudely slapped with red and white gloss paint, and had photographs cut out of the Liverpool Echo and stuck on it. But it's amazing. It is truly remarkable because, of course, this is made by fans. Real supporters, and they've gone to so much trouble to make it, and actually I think it's beautiful. It's like folk art, if you like. But the thing is, it isn't just that. It's the role it played in the history of this club. So there we are in 63-64. We're about to win the First Division League Championship under Bill Shankly. This is such a big moment. Shankly has done it. But we also know in advance that the First Division trophy, the old lady as we like to call it, isn't going to be able to come across from Goodison Park to Anfield in time for the players to celebrate with it. Don't ask me why, but hey, there you go. But it was known in advance. So they're going to celebrate winning the league with nothing. So the Curlet brothers just come along to the Kop and just think, well, at least we can wave this around, it's a bit of fun. So Ron Yates sees it, bring it down, and the players celebrate on the pitch at length with it. They're photographed afterwards with it. There are loads of photographs with the players with it. There are more photographs of the players with this than with the actual old lady trophy. Fantastic. No one thinks it's weird. No one thinks it's embarrassing. Nobody thinks, photograph of a heap of junk. No, absolutely not. Far from it. Okay, that in itself would be a great story, wouldn't it? So we now move to 1966, and here we are about playing Chelsea, and we're about to win the 65-66 First Division League Championship. And guess what? News has already come through in advance that Everton, who've got the trophy, are not going to be able to get it across to Anfield in time for them to celebrate. But this time round, Bill Shankly gets in touch with the Curlet brothers and says, if you've still got that trophy, make sure you bring it along. Here's some tickets. Blah, blah, blah. We need it. We need it to celebrate. It's actually endorsed at the highest level by the club. So they celebrate with it. There's lots of lovely photographs. The Curlet brothers go back into the dressing room, blah, blah, blah. I just think that is unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, I just think what top football club in the world would actually honestly celebrate like that And no one thinks it's stupid or daft or ridiculous. Far from it. In fact, if anything, again, there are more pictures of Shankly with the Curlet Cup than there are actually with the piece of silverware itself. And I just think that says everything about this wonderful club and its supporters, doesn't it?
Yeah, but was that easy to track down? Were they happy?
They tracked me down. They tracked me down because I honestly, it was just one of those things. I thought, and then I suppose the other object, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little medal. And we're really talking very small, and it's worn smooth. It's been handled thousands and thousands of times. And this was awarded in 1892. And, I suppose 1892, 93, I suppose. At the end of our first ever season as a football club. And it's a local reserve winners medal. And the guy, McNally, who got it, he never played in the first team. He's a player, really, you could say, of no consequence. No one remembers his name. No one talks about it. This particular competition, it's a minor competition, but we're a brand new football club. And the reserves have won a medal. And this guy's been given this little medal. And it's so obvious that was something of such importance to him and his family. It's been worn smooth. It's been handled for years and years and years and years. And this was, again, just brought in to the museum. And I remember looking at it and thinking, this is incredible, because if this McNally and his teammates, again, most of whom have been forgotten, if they could know where the club went, having won that reserve league, they were obviously quite sure, we've done all right, wow, but look where we've come from. And I just think that humble little object just sums up, if you like, all the hopes and dreams that the likes of Holding and McKenna and Barclay had when they created Liverpool Football Club. But could they ever have really imagined where we would have got to? But, so I think that's an important object, I think.
Yeah, yes, that's pretty special. A lot of people who like Liverpool know Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley, Kenny Dalglish, Stephen Gerrard, Jurgen Klopp. Maybe a tough task for you, but is there another name that maybe isn't as widely appreciated or known that you think can be, maybe not up there with them, but maybe the step below, or if you think they're as good as them?
Well, my personal feelings are there are huge numbers of personalities in the club that should also be mentioned as like household names. The one I think immediately comes to mind is Tom Watson. Now, Tom Watson was our manager, and Tom Watson, in fact, was the manager who won us our first championship title in 1901. He won us another one in 1906. He made Liverpool a big club. But also, Tom Watson was something really special. And unfortunately, I think it was TB that took him away far too soon. Sadly, he died. But he was from Newcastle. In fact, Tom Watson, an extraordinary career. He's the one who put the two Newcastle teams together so they became united. Hence the reason why they're Newcastle United, because they had Newcastle South and Newcastle North. But also he went to Sunderland, which is somewhat controversial if he's from Newcastle. But anyway, he then had this incredible team, a team of all the talents that I think they won 3 league championships in a row. They were astounding. Sunderland. He was the best manager in the world. There was no one better. And you've got to think again of the ambition of Holding, McKenna and Barclay. They wanted Liverpool to be the best, and somehow they convinced this guy to leave this incredible team that was running beautifully, was running like clockwork and winning, and he would have commanded a very high salary, and they got Watson to come to Liverpool, and it just transformed our fortunes completely. And I think Watson, it was taken away too soon. He died young. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he could have lived longer. But he's a name that we should really, really all think about, because it's all very well talking about Shankly arriving and reviving Liverpool Football Club. He revived us. He didn't create us. He revived us. We'd been in the second division, pulled us out. Fantastic. Look at Paisley and everything he won. Yeah, but none of that could have happened unless the team had started to become a great side. So Tom Watson's a name. But there's another name I also will throw out, and I've mentioned him earlier, Peter Robinson, PBR, as he was known within the club. Peter Beckett Robinson. He was basically club secretary and ended up being a kind of chief exec. Title doesn't really matter too much, but basically from 65 till 2000, might have been 2001, I forget exactly. I think it might have been 2001 he stepped down. I mean, that's astounding. The longest serving administrator in any football club in the world, any serious football club. And he is very much behind this much talked about kind of the Liverpool way, the way of doing things. He was very well spoken, very quiet way of sorting things out. But when you think from 1965 and all the managers that he was helping to run, helping to fund and finance, helping to do all the transfers in and transfers out, Peter was very, very important indeed, and he's very much in the back room, not very much in the public eye. There aren't even really so many photographs of him, but a really important character, and kind of knits together that wonderful period, if you like, from Shankly to Gerard Houllier, and you think of what this club achieved during that time. It's astounding, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but yeah, they're two great names, and thank you for not just saying like Sadio Mane or something like that. That was a lot more interesting to think. I want to ask you about, obviously, recently, someone you mentioned before, Ron Yates, passed away, sadly. A lot of Shankly's team have passed away. When something like that happens, as you did with Ray Clements, I think the club does a good job of honouring these people. I was looking back, though, it was 94, the last stand of the Cop. They had all the old players coming out on the pitch, like Billy Liddell, Albert Stubbins, player like that. I don't know whether I'm just putting an opinion on you or whatever, but do you think that too much is done for players after they pass away? And like, could there be an opportunity where Ian Callaghan, as you say, he's got to be remembered as the club legend? His legacy will be times by 10 when he passes away. So I'm not wishing that happens anytime soon or anything like that, but could more be done for current legends to let them know how loved they are by the club?
I completely agree. And basically, I've been working for probably about 6-7 years on this, or have been. I may still even get roped in again when it finally comes to pass, but this is something that I've been working on very, very hard behind the scenes in the club, saying we need to celebrate our legends while they're alive. And I feel very strongly about this, actually. And there is a project that's sort of underway. And that's why, unfortunately, I'm slightly reluctant about saying too much, because it hasn't actually happened, which I find frustrating. But I think it will happen, and it will start to roll out. And the idea is that we create effectively a kind of a Hollywood-style walk of fame. And the idea is that every year, 10 personalities from the club, not just players, people such as Peter Robinson, for instance, who obviously is no longer with us, but people are recognised 10 on 10 on 10, year after year after year after year. So you get a huge number of people, though. But whilst some of these people, sadly, will be no longer with us, the idea is that active, alive people are also recognised. So it's a nice, happy blend. And yes, Ian Callaghan, for example, would most certainly be one of those. Unfortunately, that hasn't quite been put into place yet, but I'm hopeful will happen soon. However, one thing that I've been working very hard on for years, and thankfully has been done, is the plaque to the Boot Room boys that went up. But of course, on there is Roy Evans. And I'm very, very fond of Roy. It's pretty obvious why. I had a bond with him literally from the day I was interviewed for the club. Lovely, lovely man. And I really made it known to the club, I do not want us to be paying tribute to Roy Evans when he's not with us anymore. And I said, and he was part of the Boot Room, an important part. Sadly, nearly all of the other significant members of the Boot Room are passed on. So we made that plaque, and of course Roy was there. And I felt that was something really, really important. But we can do considerably more, and that's something that I have been trying very hard to do, and I hope will come to pass before too long.
Yeah, but it's so important to honour the past. I think, and as you say, it's easy to a minute's applause when someone passes away, but you could do more beforehand. So, just speak about that then. How important is history, do you think, to a modern football club? Like, is Onslaught, is John Henry, any other Premier League club, are they bothered about what came before them?
People have their own opinions about FSG, and that's fine. My own personal take is I've been lucky enough to meet John on a number of occasions, and Tom on many occasions, and others who work for FSG. They love the club. It should come as no great surprise. I mean, they're Americans. Americans are completely bonkers about history. I mean, anything that dates before 1900 is ancient history. And I'm not being horrible when I say that, but the new world does tend to be a bit kind of overexcitable about history. So, and they get it. And I'll give you a lovely example about that. On the day or the day after, I think it might be the day that they took over the club, I had to show them around the museum, walk them around. So there it was with John Henry on one side and Tom Werner on the other. And there was the really important moment. In those days, we had a little section on the early days of the stadium itself. And there was a picture of the Archibald Leach period when Anfield was being reconstructed, and the old main stand, and it showed the concrete structure of the main stand. And I said to them, this still exists, and it's the oldest pre-stressed concrete structure that survives on planet Earth. The two that predated it were destroyed in World War II. And so this is now the oldest. I said, but this system is basically the system that's now used even now for modern buildings. All skyscrapers, everything, the Liver building used the same, basically pre-stressed concrete beams, and you clad it. I said, this is the foundation of all modern buildings. I said, now, if you build a new stadium on Stanley Park, what are you going to do with this? Because it's ugly, it's not beautiful, but you're going to knock it down. And they looked at me and said nothing. And a week later, the architects were brought in, find a way of extending the main stand. And that structure still exists to this day. I effectively put in their mind the history, and they preserved it. And I think that was a good day's work on my side. So history is really important. And I'm going to say it because what the heck. A good friend of mine, Gary James, he built a beautiful museum at Man City. And he's a historian and a very, very decent, honourable man who really, really, really loves his club. And he understood the history of Man City right back from its foundation days. He was there, through all the grim years when they didn't win much, but he celebrated and loved it. It was a beautiful museum. And then, the current owner stepped in, basically called him into the office and said, take everything away. We're shutting the museum down. There is no history before I arrived. Now, okay, that's his opinion, and he owns the club. There will be a new generation of people growing up, loving where Man City are now. But there's a huge army of decent people who supported their club thinking, so Colin Bell never existed then, for example, just to name one. And I feel personally that is wrong and sad, and I don't think in the long term that will play out well. But hey, each club does what they want to do, and that's that. But I'm delighted to say that this club since 1997 has been passionately fond of its history, and I've been called upon endlessly to find ways of helping get that history out, and I don't see that changing.
Yeah, but good from a Liverpool fan's perspective, but obviously from a Man City fan and maybe anyone else who doesn't do that, there's a lot of ground to be made up. Very last question then on Liverpool history stuff. There's a lot of things that are missing from history. I wrote the book about Tommy Lawrence's 66 Cup final medal. The family don't know where it is, stuff like that. Is there one piece, one item, something that you were trying the hardest to track down and never managed to find?
Yeah, we'll never find it, but the dream would be a blue and white quartered shirt from our first season. It won't happen. It won't turn up. I would really like one of those. We have a replica, but no, that won't turn up. No, I mean, no, there are things that are missing, but you know, it's amazing though. Over the years, things do turn up, and you slowly tick little boxes, and we are ticking an awful lot of them, but I think it's probably stuff from the very, very early years where we are the weakest, and it would be nice to have more stuff from, let's say, pre-1914 would be nice. You know, we have stuff, we have some medals and things, but and we have been able to fill gaps. But I think the dream though would be a shirt from the first season. Another one won't happen. But we did famously for one season wear a red and white vertical striped shirt. That's never going to turn up. I wonder half like one. It'd be great, wouldn't it? But it ain't going to happen. But there's also things like, for instance, players from the 60s were notorious for not keeping stuff. I mean, they just weren't interested, and you know. It'd be wonderful to have a pair of Ian Callaghan's boots, or Roger Hunt's, or Ian St. John's. The players didn't or don't have them. They don't and haven't, you know, just thrown in the bin years ago. Yes, something like that. From the 60s. A pair of boots from the 60s would be really nice. But 70s, we've managed to get a few, but 60s ones are really rarer than hen's teeth.
So anyone at home's walking around in some Ian St. John's boots?
If you've got Roger Hunt's boots from 1966, please let us know.
All right, that's good. Well, thank you again. Very fascinating stuff. We'll have another quick break, and then we'll come back in a second, having more of a chat.
Hi, I'm Warren, the producer for the Football Historian podcast, and we're here today to talk to you about the Patreon subscription.
Yes, so for just £1 a month for the first 100 people, there's a lot of benefits that you get, and I think £1 is a terrific deal.
Pittance, yes,
£1 only, and you get early access, which means at least 24 hours before everyone else gets the episode, you get to watch it. There's also an extra section, we call it the Football Historian Podcast Extra Time, and we ask all the questions to the guests that no one else gets to see unless you're a patron. And on top of that, you're the ones who get to ask the questions. You send them in, we tell you which guest is going to be coming and sitting in this chair. You ask them, we record it, you get to watch it, no one else does. On top of that, we do a monthly special. We did one last night. It was a quiz, you were there.
Yeah, bedlam and great content.
Yeah, so hopefully you can watch that. As I said, we've got a round on Limvoy Primus or Lionel Messi. We've done mastermind stuff, all that. That's going to happen every month. The bigger this grows, we're going to do it even more regularly. Hopefully it'll be once a week. But we need your support. So to do that, £1 a month for the first 100 people. Your early support will be rewarded. From then on, it's £3 a month if you want to support us. If you want to pay £5 a month, you get all that we've just mentioned, but you get a poster. Warren will sign it, I'll sign it, all the lads. We'll get a few of the guests to do it as well. We'll send that out to you. And then for £10 a month, you get all that, the poster, all the early access, and you get a free copy of any of my books. So I've done one on Billy Liddell, Crossing the Park, Tommy Lawrence. They're all worth at least £20. For just £10, you get a copy of the book, all the stuff we've already mentioned. We'd really appreciate your support. We cannot do this without you.
This really is a passion project, and anything people can put into it goes straight back into it. We don't take a wage. We're doing this for free. We're doing this because we enjoy what we do.
That's it. It all makes the content better. And I say from just £1 a month, you can make our dreams come true. Thanks for the support. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Right, welcome back. Third section. Bit of a gear change here. We're going to talk about your books, and obviously the first thing is just you're obviously so involved in Liverpool history and football. To then be someone who writes crime mystery novels from the 40s, 50s. Like, is that always something you wanted to do? Is that your passion? Is that football a passion? You know, how does it all mix up in your head?
How did it all mix up in my head? Very good question. I have a lot of interest in life, and I suppose it is fair to say that one of the reasons for retiring at the age of 64 is it's time to then try and push on with some other sides. So yeah, since 2006, I've been writing a series of crime detective novels. I've always been obsessed with reading, but weirdly, I didn't really think I wanted to be a writer of a novel, but then I tried it and discovered that I absolutely love it, but it's quite time intense. Somehow I managed to write 12 of them whilst holding the job with Liverpool Football Club. But now it's time to maybe motor on and go for this full time sort of thing, kind of professionally, for want of a better word. But yeah, it's something I really like, and it's a different side of my brain, if you like. I don't write about football. I've written huge amounts in my job at Liverpool Football Club about football, so it's a step away. It gives you time to do other stuff, and one of my other great passions is, I love railways. I love steam railways. So I've taken a steam railway and a crime detective, inspector, and shoved the two of them together. And also I love history, so they're set in the past, and in a way it's a way of just sort of, I don't know, almost like living in the past a little bit. Your character moves around through time, and I kind of enjoy it really. So yeah, I'm concentrating a little bit more on that now.
And obviously, as you touched on there, it's a love of steam trains. I read it's something while you were wearing a Batman cape is when you realised it. Is that correct? And how did your love of trains?
Yeah, I love trains since I can really remember. But the most important thing, it's kind of the Batman cape. Remember that great TV series of Batman, which I absolutely love. Not the films. I'm not interested in them. They're too dark. I like the silly one. And I loved that. And anyway, so 1968. It's August the 3rd, 1968, and I've just turned 8. And I've got my Batman cape, which I got for my birthday. I mean, my mate Sean, who lived opposite, got a Robin cape to go with it because, Batman doesn't exist without Robin. So he was really chuffed. It wasn't his birthday. Like, So there we are, right? And I were on the street, and it was these big dark thunderclouds coming in. I remember it so vividly. And my mum came out, and she said, "Oh, you better come in. I think it's going to be thunder." And I said, "Yeah. Anyway, Mum, I've just decided what I'm going to do when I grow up. I'm going to become a steam train driver." And she went, "Ah. Yeah, see, there's a bit of a problem about that, Steve. You see, in a few days' time, the very last steam train ever is about to leave Liverpool. And that's it." I'm like, oh. And it's taken me quite a long while to get over that fact. So I just remembered the end of steam. But of course, thankfully, we live in a country where crazy mad people restore these things and even build new ones. So I can indulge in that passion. But writing books is a way of, if you like, of transporting yourself back, and perhaps it's a little bit cleaner. And and the pay wasn't very good either, so I probably made quite a good decision in the end, really.
Right about there instead, yeah. Well, Inspector Vignoles, book number 13 is it coming along, and obviously it's a big task book. Can you briefly explain the 12 before them and why people may want to read?
Yeah, okay. I'm in a situation at the moment where I've now got a literary agent, and she's trying to get the books placed with a bigger publisher, and all sorts of things are happening behind the scenes at the moment. So to a certain extent, I kind of because I published everything myself. It was all self-published. Literally, did everything myself. But it's time to kind of get a bit more serious about it. So for the moment, there isn't a new one due to come out by myself. We're kind of waiting to see if we can get some kind of a deal, maybe a TV series, But basically, Vignoles is a railway detective, and he's based in Leicester. There are family connections with Leicester, so the reasons for choosing that. And he has a small group of people, including 2 WPCs, working for him. And the first book, when you first meet him, was 1946. And you move through the years, year on year. Each book is another year moving forward. All sorts of adventures. But one of them that might particularly interest people here is I wrote a book called New Brighton Rock. Well, Graham Greene, of course, wrote a famous book called Brighton Rock, and I somewhat cheekily thought, well, what if I put new in front of it? I was living in New Brighton at the time. It's a place I love and know very well. Go there all the time, every day, I would say. I live in Liskeard now. So I thought, well, I think I'm allowed to put new in front of Brighton Rock and write New Brighton Rock. So basically, Vignoles and his wife go on holiday to New Brighton. But of course, terrible things happen, and they end up having to have a kind of a busman, or should we say railwayman's holiday, and solve a crime in New Brighton. Although there is a brief mention of Liverpool Football Club in that book. But anyway, yeah, so that might interest a few people. But yeah, they've ranged across all sorts of different things in different locations. And on one occasion, he finds himself down in the Cotswolds at a place called Broadway, a rather beautiful little village. And Murder in Broadway, as it's called, probably my best-selling book of all time. That has gone completely crazy. And currently the most recent book is one called The Signalman's Daughter, which has also turned out to be a massive, massive success. But somewhat intriguingly, during the COVID lockdown, which was a bit freaky and weird, but of course you have quite a lot of time sitting on your own, literally. I was reminded of the 1957 COVID outbreak. And as it happened, that book was supposed to be set in 1957. So I thought, right. So I wrote, it's a bit of a sci-fi one, that, and it's a bit gloomy and it's a bit grim. But I wrote it very, very fast during that first COVID period when we were all thinking, are we actually going to die? Is this literally going to be the last book I ever write? Whatever. So I decided to take the 1957, they called it Asiatic flu then, but it was actually COVID. A lot of people died. So that's kind of a bit of fun as well. It's a bit John Wyndham, Dave the Triffidish kind of book. But so, yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, great. And then obviously you said that you like go to like the 40s and 50s. How important is fact in the fiction?
Oh, very important. One of the things I'm famous for is that my books are based heavily on the period. And I like and it's little things like you got to get the kind of the food right, and the music has got to be right, and the clothes are right, and it's those little details that you just drop in. What brand of tobacco is he rolling to put in his pipe, for instance, that just give that authenticity. And there's a spin-off series which I've just started at the moment, set in 1972, and everyone who loved Life on Mars, that TV series, is going to love this. In one of the WPCs, she's now become a DCI, and she's actually based in Bristol. But it's very 1972, a period which I remember well, and it's important to try and capture the whole ethos and flavour of that. But also you've got to kind of capture the mannerisms and the way people acted and the way people behaved, the way people spoke. Language changes all the time. But also there are things like, I love the All Creatures Are Great and Small series that's on Channel 5 at the moment. I think it's wonderful. It's beautifully written. However, the one thing that niggles me, and I know why they do it, but it's wrong, the men are all hugging each other. Men did not hug each other in the 1940s. Fact.
Yeah.
They just didn't. That's a modern construct. Now, it's a small detail, and everything else is beautifully put together, but it's just like, they just wouldn't do that. You just wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think it's, hands were shaken, it's very, very formal, and I think it's important to show how things then change as the years move on and how people change their way of interacting, Anyway, but facts are important, yeah. Yeah, my books are fiction, but they are grounded on strong, strong facts. Yeah.
So how was it doing your writing with your full-time job? And obviously now you've retired, is it going to be a lot easier for your next project?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot easier. You've got a lot more time. I work part-time in latter years with Liverpool Football Club, partially for that, because then 2 days a week or 4 days a week, even Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I could focus on other things. So I kind of got the two balanced. But yeah, looking back, I'm not really quite sure I managed it, because I'd literally wake up very early in the morning, write for an hour, then go to work, and then go to work, come back, and then try and write another hour sort of thing. And somehow I managed to get all these books out. I don't think I could do that now. Just getting older.
Well, I don't know, obviously, as you said there, you're retired now, so what else is retired life away from Anfield? And you're still involved with the club a bit. What do you do there? What are you doing elsewhere?
Yeah, it's like you can leave Liverpool, but you can't really, can you? So I'm delighted and absolutely thrilled by this, that I'm working alongside the absolutely wonderful Emma Case, daughter of Jimmy, of course, with the Liverpool Foundation on this monthly event we have, where we basically get sort of older or people who are members of the community, or people who are perhaps a bit isolated, people with memory loss issues. We've had a deaf community group coming in and everything. And we basically use a bit of history, interviewing former players such as John Barnes, for instance, and other activities, and a few objects which trigger memories, and get people basically talking and interacting. And I absolutely love it. And I think this feels very right, because it feels like I'm kind of using some of my history angle and objects from the museum, but actually you kind of just, I don't know, helping people in the community have a more enriched and fulfilling life, and the foundation is brilliant and wonderful people there, so I really enjoy that. So yeah, I'm keeping my contacts with the club. But people always say to you, when you retire, you actually you wonder how you ever had time to go to work, and it feels a little bit like that. Literally, I've got so many things to do. I build a model railway as well, so it's like I write, I paint as well. I'm also a painter. I also like doing gardening, so I've got tons of things to do.
Well, thank you for fitting us in. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, well, we'll have a final break, and I want to do some of the more customary endings to this podcast. We'll see how you fare in them. But last final break, and we'll see you in a sec. Are you looking for a Kazakhstani football team to support? Then I think FC Keme is a team you should support. Do you agree?
Growing up as a child, I always had FC Keme posters on my bedroom wall.
Well, and all the children of the Kazakhstani future will have FC Keme posters on their wall, because FC Keme is the team to support, and because of that, Tom has made us a chant that we're all going to follow. So,
up the Keme, da 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 da. Up the Keme, da 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 da.
Up the Keme. Make sure you follow them on all the social medias. All the posts and all the things you should follow will appear below us and right here. You should be a supporter of FC Keme.
Live, laugh, Keme.
Hello, welcome to the final section. We're going to talk a bit more about football history in general. I'm going to start off for you with the top 5 Liverpool players of all time. People add different caveats to it. They want it to be their favourite, people they've only seen, do whatever you wish. But the question is, who are the best 5 Liverpool players of all time?
Well, the caveat I'm going to put is that I really don't like ranking players because in my job, as I think it's probably becoming obvious, you get to know most of these players. There are very, very few players who are alive who I haven't met at some point. Some of them have become friends. And I don't know about you, but you don't sort of say, well, who's your favourite friend? And who's your second favourite friend? And who's your third favourite friend? That it feels a bit weird.
Yeah.
And so I'm not very fond of that. So I'm not going to do a rank.
That's fab.
But what I do feel is that there are obvious names that come to mind. I mean, how can you not mention Ian Callaghan? How can you not mention Ian Rush? Because you just look at the sheer longevity of their careers and how many goals or games or whatever. Same goes for Phil Neal. These guys inhabit a zone that, if you like, is kind of obvious in some ways. And no disrespect, I rate them extremely highly. Same goes for Kenny Dalglish. And so on and so on. But then you think, yeah, but you're just going to come up with this. Everyone's just going to come up with the same names. But also, I think, yeah, but there are lots of players that have had huge influence on this club, but it isn't necessarily that they did more or they did best, or because otherwise it comes a bit like, whose dad's better than my dad's better than your dad kind of thing, which I don't like. So I'm just going to throw a few names out, really, of people who have meant a lot to me, or who I believe have meant a lot to the club, although I didn't personally see or know them. I mean, for instance, one of the name I would say is Gordon Hodgson. Now, Gordon Hodgson, if I could go back in time, I would love to have watched Gordon Hodgson play. The great Roger Hunt, fabulous player, wonderful man, really, really lovely man. He famously broke Gordon Hodgson's record. This was a big, big moment for the club. But the point is then, let's deflect that back. Gordon Hodgson, what an incredible guy. He not only was a fabulous footballer for Liverpool, but whilst he was a footballer for Liverpool, he played cricket for Lancashire, and he played basketball for Everton. Or baseball for Everton. How incredible is that? In fact, here's a great pub quiz for which Liverpool player concurrently played at Goodison, Anfield, and in Old Trafford. It's Gordon Hodgson. Now, I think that is worthy of respect, isn't it? So I think everyone should, a little shout out to Gordon Hodgson. The other one would be Alex Raisbeck, who is considered to be like one of our first great superstar players. And again, we've mentioned Tom Watson, our first great manager, but also there's the likes of Sam Raybould, who played alongside him. Now, obviously, there's no one alive who ever saw these people play, but from what you read about them, they sound really somebody special. But then, let's move into more modern times. I mean, lots of people quite rightly are enthusing about Virgil van Dijk, but I'd say when he can play as many games as brilliantly as Alan Hansen, Virgil can then start to inhabit that zone. And I'm not being disrespectful to Virgil, but Alan Hansen, I mean, I watched him play. He was one of my great footballing heroes. I got to know him really well. Ghost wrote his column for years for the magazine, for the programme and so on. Similarly, I have to say Ray Clemence. You can talk about goalkeepers, and there's some great ones. Sam Hardy is a great name that comes to mind. Bruce Grobbelaar was fantastic. Obviously, we've got a great goalkeeper now. But Ray Clemence, for me, has got to be absolutely the best. But there again, Tommy Lawrence, what a wonderful guy he was. And you think, 1965 FA Cup final, won 2 league titles under Shankly. But Ray, and for my shirt, bizarrely, to be used as the official tribute to Ray, as something special. Yeah. But I'm also going to say, you can talk about strikers, and we've mentioned, a couple already. But I'm also going to say, well, Natasha Dowie. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Say, hang on a second, everyone. Hang on a minute. She won back-to-back Women's Super League titles. She was phenomenal, and watching her play, and I did, she was amazing. She was absolutely amazing. So I think, we have to sort of step out a little bit here and think there are other ways of looking, so I'm going to mention her as well. So that's my kind of answer.
That's a very good answer. I'm going to say, and anyone who's not aware of those people should definitely look them up. Yeah, Gordon Hodgson, as I say, is someone I've been that interested in for a while as well. But that's a good,
phenomenal guy by all accounts. I would love to have watched.
We do a monthly quiz here, so I might rob that.
I think you should. It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah. Just before we go to the next one, then, what do you think is the best era of football? Obviously, I haven't researched what came before. I know it's a tough one. I know you don't like doing it, but what do you think is the best?
What is best? I mean, it's very hard to say anything other than the Bob Paisley era. I mean, Bob Paisley and what he did for this club was just out of this world. And no disrespect to Shankly, and I get everything that Shankly did, but come on. Bob Paisley, I mean, 3 European Cups alone, but I mean, all those league titles, Okay, he didn't get us an FA Cup, but I think we'll forgive him. 77 FA Cup, not going quite the way we wanted it to. For me, I suppose also because of my age, the 70s and the 80s, the players, and I know so many of them or met so many of them. I also just loved the atmosphere of the games in those days. And, the 87-88 team, okay, I know we're moving into Dalglish then, you see, but then that's the thing. And then you start thinking, it's difficult for me to really say much else than, okay, let's say Paisley into Fagan. How about that as an era? When you look at what was won during that period, it is a little bit hard to disagree. Having said that, again, wouldn't you just love to go back in time and be at Anfield in 1900 to 101 and see what it was like to win the first time? That would have been kind of interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, that would have been really something else, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think obviously it's impossible, but like the idea of just watching it one game from each decade, I always think would be amazing. Just to go
and see what football was really like. Because I mean, it's difficult to know. We don't really know what football was like in the 1920s when it had the Untouchables and those great back-to-back wins. Again, the football must have been really good. Yeah. It must have been amazingly good, but actually, what really was it like? We'll never know.
Yeah. We never know. Might make a time machine. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Have you got a top 5 non-Liverpool players, or do you want to go straight into the 5-a-side team?
Top 5 level. I don't have a top 5, but what I'm going to throw out is I think the France team that won the World Cup. I would say literally every single member of that team. I just thought they were amazing. They were literally like connoisseurs of good football. Everything about them, from the shirts, from the way they held themselves, the way they played. Honestly, I remember watching that World Cup and just thinking the whole time, are they the best side I've ever seen? Now, I can't really speak in detail about Brazil 1970 because I saw little tiny bits, and it's a long while ago. But honestly, they were just amazing, and the players have turned out to be really quite incredible footballers, you know, on so many levels. Going to offend people deeply, including myself, but somewhat reluctantly, and against everything. Oh, it drove us mad. Couldn't stand him in a way, but Eric Cantona was amazing. I mean, he really was amazing, and you can't say that he wasn't. Yeah, he broke our hearts. He played for for Man United, but my God, he was good. Jika Haji, what a player! I would honestly say I watched him twice play for Romania, and you know, people will quite rightly talk about many other great global footballers, but honestly, Haji at his best was something else.
Yeah. There's some good names again. Thank you very much. Right, all-time five-a-side team.
Right now, this is a fun one. I'm going to give you the all-time five-a-side team that I played against.
Okay.
So we had Phil Neal and Alan Kennedy, Jan Molby. I think it was John Durnin. Yeah. And this is slightly embarrassing senior moment. I can't quite remember who the fifth man was, but I'm pretty sure it was Ronnie Whelan. And but I could be wrong about that one, but I'm pretty sure. So that's the best five-a-side team I've ever played against. And basically, for years and years and years, Monday night, a bunch of us lads at the club, we would go down to the pits, Power League, call it what you like, and we'd play five-a-side. We'd put our £5 on the table. And for about 3+ years, Phil Neal and Alan Kennedy would come along. They'd put their £5 on the table, same as everybody else, and we'd play five-a-side. And I'd be in goal with my Ray Clements shirt or whatever. And then one summer, those were the days when they used to have the kind of five-a-side masters when with the former players of different football clubs. Yeah. So and of course Liverpool were really good, really good. I think they won it many times. And they said, would you give us a warm-up match? So there you go. That's my best five-a-side team I've ever played against.
That's a good one. John Durnin was a proper Masters legend.
Yes, he was. It was him. It was John Durnin. I'm sure. I mean, he was the young legs, of course. You know. But and I've got to say, Jan Molby. Oh, jeez. I remember this. I was standing in the goal, and literally they kicked off. Ball to Jan. Jan just whacked it, and it was like a Exocet missile. I just felt wind go past back of the net. Didn't even see it. I mean, honestly, you've never seen anything like it. He spent the whole time basically in the centre circle. It was like he had a force field around him. Anyone came anywhere near him, the ball just passed. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Quite a good player. Yeah. We've got a picture of him there.
I know, just again looking at Jan, yeah. Nice one, Jan. But no, I mean, and I have to say, I can't remember what the final score was, but it was respectable. We lost, obviously, but it was respectable. It wasn't, it wasn't basketball scores on one side, We kept it within acceptable limits, but it was brilliant.
So what's everyone else and all the other pitchers doing? Are they looking?
Slowly, they started to slow their games down, and we saw people then looking, thinking, "Oh my God, have you seen who's playing?" Yeah. It was.
Was that because of you or Jan Molby?
Well, yeah, obviously it was because of me. I mean, obviously it was.
Look at that, yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, great. And are we good to finish with a couple of quick debates?
Yeah,
one word answer me.
Fire something away, see what happens.
Okay, so we have a quick transition here with a debate.
The debate.
And then we've got the first one, which is Gerrard, Lampard or Scholes.
Well, it's got to be Gerrard, hasn't it? I mean, look, I don't know Lampard and I don't know Scholes. From what I can see, I watched them play. They were all phenomenal players. But, it's sort of academic, isn't it, really? Because, Lampard doesn't play for Liverpool. Scholes doesn't play for Liverpool. To be honest with you, if Scholes had played for Liverpool, he would have been absolutely amazing, I'm sure. And I think we'd all have loved him.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And Gerrard, on the other hand, for me, Gerrard is a class apart, though. And I mean it quite seriously, not just because I know the guy. But very briefly, I would say I would rate him as one of our great captains. And the reason why I rate him very, very highly as a captain is, and I mean no disrespect, but he captained sides that, let's face it, were not packed with the greatest players. And he literally had to kind of pull together, let's face it, not the best teams. And get incredible results. And I would say the 2006 FA Cup final being a wonderful example of a captain who literally laid himself on the line to try and get us over the line. And Gerrard all the time.
Good. Next one is Pele or Maradona.
Pele wore a cooler shirt. I found Maradona. Look, Maradona was obviously an utter genius, but he was very much a damaged genius. And although I'm not the biggest fan of England and international football generally, the hand of God annoys me. And Pele, on the other hand, was cool. And their shirts are pretty cool. No, it's got to be Pele, hasn't it? I mean, come on.
Right, then the next one is Messi or Ronaldo.
Can't stand either of them. Ronaldo I find utterly irritating, and Messi looks like a bank manager. Having said that, I don't know either of them. They're probably absolutely wonderful guys. They are unquestionably brilliant footballers. I don't know, really. I don't really have a feeling either way. I mean, I think you have to say respect both of them. They are just utterly amazing footballers, but they don't really come across as people that I feel have any emotions about, really. Yeah. I feel a bit like I don't really care one way or another.
That could be your answer if you
I
wish.
think my answer is I don't really have any particular feeling. I find both of them really annoying to watch, and in fact, but my final answer is my best Messi moment for me was when we utterly destroyed Barcelona, and Andy Johnson,
Andy Robson.
Robson. Yeah. God, my brain's going. Andy Robertson. I loved that moment. Andy Robertson just tousled his hair and he was totally pissed off. And so I think, let's go for Messi having his hair tousled. That's my highlight moment of the two of them for
that's
me.
That's for okay, that's good. If Messi and Ronaldo are the best players of the last 10, 15 years, do you have someone who would be third place behind them, or possibly even above them, given the distaste you have for them?
It's very hard to say, really, isn't it? Because there are a lot of extremely good players in the world, and it depends on which position they're playing in as well, doesn't it?
Yep.
And so each position isn't comparable. So you can, if you compare strikers, it's like who scored the most goals, perhaps. But then if you compare defensive players, it's a different kind of play, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's very, very, very hard, and so I actually don't really know how to answer that one, because I don't really think players don't really compare, because it depends on what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if you're a great lover of quality defensive play, any name you come up with is going to sound a bit weird alongside Ronaldo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know, really.
You can say pass.
Yeah, I think I am going to pass on that one, because I just don't feel. I just feel that sort of comparison doesn't really work.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely fine. So there's two left. One I've prepped you on, one not. But the greatest manager of all time.
Greatest manager of all time. Well, I actually coined the phrase the greatest manager of the greatest manager of the 20th century, Bob Paisley. In the 20th century, I don't think in top football any manager achieved more than Bob Paisley for any club, and I don't see any reason to change that opinion. Now we have to admire Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, you have to, and God knows he drove us bad at the time. But you know what? You look back and have to say, but respect to the guy. So I would rate Ferguson very, very highly. You have to dig deep when you say that, but I think we have got to say. But I do genuinely think Paisley has got to be rated as one of the absolute great managers of all time. But I'm also going to give out a mad shout out. I'm a real Brian Clough fan. I mean, bonkers, mad as a box of frogs at times. But you know what? I thought what he did. When you think what he did, with two teams that, let's face it, weren't exactly the greatest in the world, and yet what he managed to achieve was astounding, wasn't it? I mean, what he did with Forest was incredible. But he's not glamorous, and he's not international, and all of that. And Ancelotti, what a great manager. Yeah, I suppose we could mention Pep Guardiola, but perhaps I won't. I mean, he's a great manager.
Yeah,
but we don't love him, do we? No, I'm going to say Paisley, and I am going to also say an honourable mention to Sir Alex Ferguson, because I think we have it. You can't be a lover of football and deny what that guy did.
Yeah.
And I know his work better than I know work of managers in other countries around the world. You know, so I feel that I can judge better. And you have to admit that no matter how much it hurt, we were sitting there thinking, oh God, you know, how good was he? And management, he knew how to buy in, and he knew when to get rid, and he was ruthless, and he was brilliant, and he wasn't ours.
So Paisley's the answer, which is good.
Paisley.
Great.
Over Bob.
And then the last question is, who's the greatest football team of all time? So I say it could be for the game, it could be for a season, a tournament, 10 years, 5 years, whatever you wish, but who is the greatest?
It is extremely hard, that one, isn't it? I think the 87-88 Liverpool was just, I mean, you know, we mentioned Pele and Brazil and, you know, whatever. And of course, there's that famous quote about being better than Brazil. I mean, I don't know if I can really truthfully make that comparison because I've not seen enough Brazil. But my goodness me, they were a well-oiled machine, weren't they, in 87-88? Yeah. They were beautiful. I watched them and loved them and admired them and got to know many of them. And that, you know, as a Liverpool supporter, being able to watch them, it didn't really come much better than that. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there aren't millions of fans out there all watching their great teams over the years who might be shouting and screaming and saying, but did you see this? Did you see that? What about Ajax? What about this? What about that? You know, blah, blah, blah. But again, you've got to remember, when you talk about other teams, how much of them did you honestly see week in, week out? You know, highlights are one thing. Everyone can put together highlights and it looks amazing, don't they? I'm sure someone put together highlights of Sean Dundee and convinced us to go and buy him. But you know what I mean? But I'm talking about how much did you actually see week in, week out on those days when it's not a glamorous game and it is raining and it is a bit cold, it is a bit gloomy. Are they still turning it on? 86, 88, they turned it on. So my gut feeling is I'd like to go for them, really.
That's great. Well, that concludes our chat. Thank you so much again for coming into the garage and speaking with us. Have you got anything you want to plug, anything you want to share, people who are watching to go and have a look at, please?
Well, I suppose the only thing I would say is if you do think a crime detective novel is your cup of tea, I have a website where you can get any of the books all signed, come from my house, signed personally by me. And it's just basically inspectorvignoles.com, you know, so just check it out and see what you think. If there's anything there you like, I'll send one out to you.
All right, that's great. Well, thank you again so much. It's been very interesting and, as I said, very apt for this podcast. And then just to thank you again, you helped me when I did my dissertation, and it was quite a source of inspiration to do stuff like this continually. And obviously nowhere near with the levels you went to, but obviously someone like you giving time to people who are in uni says volumes for the man you are as well. So thank you very much.
Well, it was a pleasure. It's what I'm here for. My job is to try and share knowledge. You shouldn't keep it to yourself. It should be shared.
All right, that's good. Well, thank you so much. No, thank you. Well, thank you for watching at home, and we'll see you next time on the Football Historian Podcast.
Locking eyes from across the room, heart is pounding. What have I have to lose? This kind of feeling tends to blur your sight.